Thankfully, you're not going to have to listen to me for the next few minutes, because it's my great pleasure to invite Clive and Colin to step forward as they open up to us, as long promised, the story of our mission plan for 2020 to 2025. And if you'll just kindly give me a moment, for those of you at home, I'm going to share the screen that we will be seeing in front of us. So you'll be able to hopefully see this presentation. But of course, it could all go horribly wrong in the next moment. Right. All clever stuff, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll just lie on that, shall we? We'll just...
Yes.
Dun, dun, dun. Is it there? Excellent. Look at right. Good. So give me a wave, those of you at home. Are you able to see the presentation? Yes? Good. Okay, I think I just can change that to make it even better for you by saying that. There you go. And if you wish to, you can minimize. Yes, exactly. I'm getting a thumbs up from Marion at home. That's good. All right. So you can now minimize, if you wish, the pictures of others in this meeting, so that you can see the plan. Over to you, Colin and
Tom, thank you. Our task in the next 15 or so minutes is to present an overview for you of the PCC mission plan for the next 5 years. And that's not an easy task. Anyone who's read the mission plan already will know that it has very many layers. These layers start at the title and the underlying principles, and then move right down to the appendices of the detailed tasks.
So our aim today is to give you just the headlines, the main features of this plan, which will be the PCC's handbook for the next few years, at least. We hope that this will give you at least some context for the changes which you will experience around you as the next few years roll by. So let's start at the very beginning.
The first thing to understand is that this new plan wasn't written in a vacuum. In 2015, we agreed our first mission development plan, grouped around the 5 themes shown here. So our first task was to begin work on our new plan and was to review our successes in each of these 5 areas. This we did at a parish conference back in February. If you haven't read that presentation for yourself, you can find it on the parish website, on the Mission Development Plan page. But this wasn't the only bit of background that we considered.
During the first 5 years of our first mission plan, we also developed some other very important documents which have guided the PCC's decision making. These have included the Fit for Purpose document, which is our 2017 plan for reordering the church, the Way Ahead, our 2018 plans for the future of the Pallant Centre, and thirdly, Going Deeper, our 2018 plan for our spiritual development as a parish. And while we have been developing plans at a local level, our diocese has also been thinking about its own strategies for the future. We are, of course, part of that diocese. Our life here in Havant is bound up with the lives of our sister churches in this area and all around the Portsmouth region. So we felt it was important to help the diocesan thinking, to take diocesan thinking on board.
As Tom has already spoken today in his sermon, the diocesan strategy is called Live, Pray, Serve. 3 very simple words which are intended to provide a framework for the whole of our lives together. So in developing our plan for the next 5 years, we've taken those 3 words and made them our own. In our new mission plan, we express them like this.
First, how shall we live as Christians in Havant? I'm just going to give you a moment to read our thoughts about this, which is very much based on the diocese's own thinking. The essential point of this statement is that Jesus is the focus of how we choose to live as Christians in Havant. It is his teachings and the example of his life, death, and resurrection which inspire us. He is the exemplar that we want to follow and to whom we want to introduce our neighbours. The next banner word we will be using is pray.
Again, please take a moment to read this statement for yourself. This statement is essentially about our spirituality. We want to encourage ourselves to grow both as individual worshippers and as a community of worshippers. And the second part of the statement about building on the practices of the past is intended to affirm the traditional roots which so many of us find so nourishing. But it is also intended to signal that our old traditions will not define us or hem us in. There is space to grow beyond them, perhaps by developing new forms of worship which reach out to new followers of Jesus or to those with different tastes. Our final banner word is serve.
So once again, please take a moment to read the statement for yourself. Following the teaching of Jesus, we believe that we are called to love God and to love our neighbours as ourselves. This statement is intended to drive us onward in the task of serving all our neighbours, whatever their social or economic backgrounds. We also think that, as a spiritual leader of this community, we have a responsibility to speak prophetically into our community. God calls us to challenge our neighbours to look at the ways we live together through God's eyes and to call out when we see our community living in harmful ways.
So that's what we aim to do. We aim to live as disciples, pray together and alone, and serve the whole of our community. None of this will be very surprising. Essentially, this is what we already do to a greater or lesser extent. But the mission plan growing out of this vision suggests practical ways for us to live out this vision more fully and more deeply. Crucially, the mission plan aims to guide the PCC and all of us to take seriously the challenge to live, pray, and serve as disciples of Jesus Christ every day.
But why? What's the point of setting such a lofty vision? What are the overall aims we want to achieve? Well, drawing again from the diocesan strategy, we believe that we want to see real progress in these three crucial areas.
Our vision of living, praying, and serving as disciples leads us to hope for growth. We intend to grow in three crucial ways: depth, impact, and number. First, in depth, we want to grow more and more in love for God, growing ever closer to the source of our life.
Secondly, in impact, we want to grow in love for our neighbours, serving more and more of those in need of us and of God.
And thirdly, in number, we want more and more people to know the peace and the sense of purpose which comes from living as disciples of Jesus Christ.
But how? How are we going to carry out these lofty ambitions? Well, that's where the detail of the mission plan comes into its own.
And frankly, it would be impossible for us to go through all of the details of our plan in the next few minutes. But what we'd like to do is show you how the plan is structured, in the hope that you'll feel like taking time with the document itself in the coming days.
Even more so, we hope that you'll feel excited by the plan we have in store, and that you'll want to join us in helping to bring at least some of the detailed ideas to fruition. So this is how it works.
Under each of the vision headings, live, pray, serve, the PCC has set itself some clear and measurable tasks to complete to help us to grow in depth, impact, and number. There are 50 tasks in total. So if we achieve 10 tasks each year for the next 5 years, we'll have completed the plan.
Each one of these tasks is either rooted in our existing strategy documents or builds upon the work of the last mission development plan. In 1 or 2 cases, new tasks have been set to take us forward into the future with new vigour. These arise especially in the light of some of the things we've learned through the pandemic about reaching out to the housebound, the lonely, and the poor.
Next, each of those 50 tasks has been allocated among our various parish teams, who will be responsible for trying to implement them as soon as resources, time, and energy permit.
Each task has an ideal target date and something called success criteria, which is management speak for saying, how do we know if we've been successful at the task? And an initial step for each task is suggested. Just so that you're aware, here are the parish teams.
Well, there's the ministry team, which of course includes worship, serving, music, bell ringing, stewarding, welcoming, flower arranging, and art.
There's the churchyard, which includes opening up the churchyard to the public.
Communications, which is about how we communicate our message, both in and outside the congregation.
There's development, which is about the various building schemes we need to undertake.
There's pallant development, which is about how the Pallant Centres ministry can grow in depth, impact, and number.
Pastoral, which is about the way we care for the most vulnerable people in our community.
There's the young people and families team, which is about how we grow the next generation. And last but not least,
there's treasury, which of course underpins most of what each of the above teams will try to achieve.
So that's the mission plan in a nutshell. And the key question for each and every one of us is, how can I get involved? We have just one request to make of you. Please pray. Take a copy of the mission plan away with you or read it on the parish website. Consider each of the tasks that we have laid out for the future of this parish, and then pray. Pray to be given the wisdom to know how you might get involved. Do you have the time? Do you have the skills which could make a difference to the achievement of these tasks? If so, why not speak to one of the team leaders and offer yourself to the cause?
Or do you perhaps have some money which could oil the wheels of our growth in depth, impact, and number? There are a number of projects that we are currently trying to get started, even now in the middle of the COVID pandemic. Here are the top projects which need some money, which we feel God is calling us to move forward on right now.
These are the projects which we most urgently need to move forward at this time. First, we need to make some headway in gathering funding for an accessible toilet, so that once we reopen the building normally, it can be a building for everyone.
Secondly, we believe that God is strongly calling us to employ a young people and families outreach worker to help us grow the next generation of worshippers at St. Faith's.
Thirdly, we believe that live streaming services from St. Faith's is going to be a long-term part of our future, and we need good quality equipment to make that happen. Live streaming from a smartphone on a stick is fine as a stopgap measure, but there's much more that we need to be able to do if we are to seriously engage with our neighbours through the internet.
After a positive meeting with the diocese this week, we are nearly ready now to launch our programme to replace our hard and inflexible pews with something much more comfortable and useful.
So when you're praying about how you can get involved in the future of our mission for this parish, perhaps you might think about whether you can get involved by a financial contribution.
Well, that's all we wanted to share with you today.